everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the show. Hope you guys have saved some room in that gas tank because it's time to go one more round with Rob. Here on today's show, I'm going to be giving you guys my take from a couple of fights from UFC 262 from this past Saturday, where a new lightweight champion of the world was crowned after the title was vacated from Khabib Nurmagomedov retiring. We'll get to that fight in a little bit. First up, though, we have the headline prelim fight between Jacare Souza and Andre Muniz to get to. Guys, this fight was interesting. It was kind of crazy. Not the whole thing crazy, but the ending specifically kind of crazy. So the fight pretty much laid out like this. Jacare and Muniz come out and they kind of trade light kicks early. I mean, if they land, they're not landing hard. They're just kind of feeling out each other, really. Jacare gets a takedown about a minute into the round. Muniz is able to get up from that, and he's actually able to get a takedown of his own about a minute later. So we're about 2 minutes into the round at this point. Both guys have traded takedowns. Jacare, off of Muniz's takedown, does get up at one point, but the way he does get up, Muniz is able to get back control on Jacare, and so he's not on Jacare's back as in like he would be on the ground. Like, he doesn't really have any hooks in. He's just he's got like a body lock in on Jacare standing up against the cage. But I mean to control Jacare like that is pretty impressive. It definitely is not something that you see every day, because Jacare is a world-class grappler. So that was like, ooh, Muniz might have a little bit of confidence building here with that. Muniz does get another takedown. Jacare gets up immediately from that. But again, Muniz gets to Jacare's back, and this time he actually jumps on Jacare's back. So he jumps up. He's got both of his legs hooked into Jacare. He's holding on. And now here's where things get a little crazy for crazy in general. Jacare tries to shake Muniz off. Now, that in and of itself, not very crazy. It's a typical, almost standard defense for when a guy has your back and you're standing. So you try to shake him off, get him off of you. That's what Jacare does. But in the process of doing that, they go to the ground, and Jacare leaves his right arm back, which meaning that he doesn't leave it in front of him where it's in less danger from Muniz. It kind of slips back and it holds, and Muniz is able to grab hold of it. So as Jacare is shaking Muniz off, Muniz slips his legs over the top, locks in an armbar on Jacare. Guys, Jacare doesn't tap. Muniz actually breaks Jacare's arm, and that forces the stop of the fight. Now, so that obviously makes Andre Muniz the winner by submission. I didn't get the time of the submission. It was decently late in the round, almost towards the end of the round. I didn't get the time of it. I was watching replay after replay after replay, trying to figure out how exactly Muniz was able to break Jacare's arm like this, because it didn't look like he was exerting that much force to it. Not saying that Muniz didn't have it locked in. Muniz definitely had it locked in, but compared to other arm bars that we've seen in the past, it didn't look as forceful as some of the other ones that we've seen. So, watching a couple of replays back, I was almost confident that Jacare had broken both the radius and the ulna, which are the two bones in the lower portion of your arm, and dislocated his shoulder. It appears that my thought at that point was wrong. I've seen a couple of posts since Saturday night, and Jacare actually from the X-rays that Jacare has shared with everyone and that have been shared from other MMA analysts and reporters and everything like that, it looks like the radius and the ulna, so the 2 bones in his lower arm are fine. It looks like he didn't dislocate his shoulder at all. It actually looks like he fractured his humerus, which is the larger bone in the upper arm, which that's a crazy feat. That I don't know that in the however long that I've been watching fights and the 20 some years that I've been training in martial arts, I don't think I've ever seen just the humerus snap from an armbar like that. That's crazy. There's no other words for it, guys. It was just crazy. Like I didn't expect that to be the case. But it was. So, I mean, overall, up until that point, it was a good fight from both guys. Jacare got a takedown early. Muniz showed that he could defend and get up and away. Muniz got a couple of takedowns. Jacare showed that he could still get up and escape. Granted, I don't think they were as efficient as Muniz's escape, but he was able to get up and get away nonetheless. So for as long as it lasted, I thought it was a good fight from both guys. I thought it was shaping up to be an entertaining fight and a very technical grappling exchange from the two, which I was really looking forward to. Obviously, in MMA, anything can happen at any time, and that's what happened here. I want to point this out too. Muniz is one of only 3 guys to take Jacare down in the last 10 years. I want to say that again for you guys. Muniz is one of 3 guys, 1, 2, 3, to be able to take Jacare down in the last 10 years. Now, I'm not even sure that those other 2 guys were able to do it multiple times. I would have to go back and rewatch the fight. The other 2 guys were Jack Hermanson and Chris Weidman. So I don't remember that fight, whether those guys got him down multiple times throughout the fight. And even if they did, I'm not sure that they got him down multiple times in one round. So I'm not saying that they didn't. I would have to go back and rewatch the fights. But, still, even if they were able to do that as well, being one of only 3 guys to take a man down in the last 10 years is pretty impressive. Not to mention, the most impressive part about this is that was the first submission loss of Jacare's career. Nobody now. I say this, and I'm going to also put a caveat on him as well. Nobody else has ever been able to submit Jacare. Now, the caveat on that I said that I would put on this is technically Jacare didn't tap. I understand it has to go down as a submission loss, but Jacare technically never tapped out. He never tapped. Like, yes, he stopped fighting because he felt his humerus snap in half. And the ref stopped the fight, and he really didn't argue it because he was like, well, my arm snapped in half. Like, I can't really do much now. But he also never tapped. So, I'm not trying to take anything away from Muniz. I just want to lay that. I want to lay the whole picture out there for everyone. Yes, Jacare has a submission loss. No, Jacare never tapped. So, it is what it is. I think Muniz has based off of this, I think Muniz has a great career coming up. If you're able to control a guy like Jacare on the ground, you're able to get that submission on him. You're able to get that submission win over him. Like, that's something to put a feather in your cap about. So I think he's got a promising career coming up. I'm excited to see what's next for him. As for Jacare, I hope he's able to heal quickly and has no lasting effects from the injury. My only concern is what he decides to do from here. I don't know that it would be the wisest decision to continue fighting. Especially after a fracture of the humerus. That is the biggest bone in your arm. It's that rehab's going to take a while. It's going to take a while. He has a plate. I want to say maybe 3/4 to 4/5 of his arm of his humerus is plated now with screws to have everything heal. And he's not the youngest guy on the roster. He's nowhere close to the youngest guy on the roster. He's probably one of the older guys on the roster. So that healing is probably going to take a little bit longer than if it happened to maybe one of the younger guys. I don't know that coming back from this injury will have the results that Jacare would want, and I'm afraid that if he does come back and it's a situation where he just keeps being controlled in this fashion or being controlled in a fight overall, I'm afraid that will affect the way that people see him and his career overall, which would obviously not be fair. The man is a legend of the sport. But that's my fear. I hope he heals quickly. I hope everything goes well. But I think he should definitely take some of this time to reflect on his career and reflect what he really wants to do moving forward. Now, going from one guy who I think needs to reflect and decide on what he wants to do moving forward, on to another guy that I think also needs to do the same thing. So the next fight I got for you guys is Tony Ferguson versus Beneil Dariush. Guys, this was not competitive at all. And I'm vastly disappointed that it wasn't. I am vastly disappointed. Beneil Dariush absolutely 100% controlled Tony Ferguson for 3 straight rounds. Now, this situation almost reminds me of a Tyron Woodley situation. So Tyron Woodley was on a tear at welterweight. He lost his belt to Kamaru Usman in a very clear 5-round controlling domination. And then I don't think Tyron Woodley has won a round inside the UFC since. He's actually released from the UFC now, so I don't believe he won a round inside the UFC since that loss. Well, since before that loss to Kamaru. And Tony Ferguson kind of has that feel to me right now. Now, that may be, there may be some people out there that say, Rob, that's crazy. But when you look back, like between 2010, I believe it was 2010 and 2019, Tony Ferguson was on a 12-fight win streak over those 10 years. He's a 12-fight win streak over 10 years. So, he's granted that's, coming out to roughly 1 fight a year. It's a little bit more than 1 fight because he had 12 fights in 10 years. But it's roughly 1 fight a year. So there's plenty of time for him to heal. And now he has had 3 fights in the last 12 months. So, I mean, his output has been picked up a little bit. And he hasn't had as much time to heal in between. But since coming into that fight with Justin Gaethje back in last May, just about a year ago now, he hasn't won a round. I don't even remember. I obviously I wasn't doing this show when that fight occurred, but I don't think that I scored any of the rounds that he had against Gaethje for Ferguson. I think when the fight stopped I believe it was the 5th round, I think I had the fight 4-0 for Gaethje in terms of rounds. If it stopped in the 4th round, I had it 3-0 for Gaethje in terms of rounds. So Tony Ferguson, and then he obviously got controlled back in December for all 3 rounds. And really didn't show anything to us against Charles Olivera. I don't know. I don't know what changed. I don't know if people have just figured out, like, hey, this is where Tony's weak. Dean Thomas was one of the cage side analysts, will say. They chimed in to him after round breaks every now and again and said, hey, Dean, what do you think? And he seemed to think that it was Tony's wild style that got him all those wins. Also is hurting him now because he didn't really focus on the fundamentals of wrestling or jiu-jitsu or striking or anything. He was just kind of a wild man, and that got everybody's attention. It was flashy. He was winning. It was unorthodox, so people were having a hard time adjusting to it. And that actually, I can see the case for it. There were positions that Beneil had Tony in on Saturday night that Tony very well should have been able to get out of, but just couldn't or didn't. Now, I don't want this to seem like this was all Tony just not performing. This was also Beneil Dariush putting on a show. He got an early. I don't even know how to start going about the takedowns that he got. He started pressing early in the fight, very early in the fight, almost immediately as the fight started. He got a takedown, his first takedown about a minute and a half in the round one. Throwing ground and pound, moving from half guard. Tony gets him back into the guard, moving to half guard again. Beneil throwing as much ground and pound as he's able to. Tony did do a decently good job of trying to control Beneil on the ground in terms of not letting him posture up so much, but it wasn't a lot. Like, this was really just Beneil out wrestling Tony for 3 rounds. Now, to start round 2, Beneil does get a takedown in the first 30 seconds, and Tony does lock in a Darce choke, and he's really good at Darce chokes. Tony is really good at Darce chokes. So this was something that had to have been of a concern to Beneil in his corner. But Beneil stays calm. He escapes. He goes back to some ground and pound. He passes to half guard. Tony is able to scramble and get on top, but then Beneil uses a heel hook to end up back on top because Tony has to defend the heel hook, which that heel hook was... I don't understand how Tony didn't tap. There was one point as Beneil had the heel hook locked in that Tony kind of leaned back. You could see it on his face that he was in pain. And Tony just kind of... He willed out of it. Beneil ends up back on top and just uses a ton of pressure for the remainder of round 2. Round 3... Tony's left leg, which is the one that got heel hooked, was definitely affected. And you could see that as they started round 3. Tony didn't really want to put a lot of pressure on it. It was definitely bothering him. And again, Beneil gets the takedown. Beneil passes the half guard. He lands some ground and pound. Tony's really just kind of hanging on. He's just trying to hold Beneil down with a body lock. It was kind of the same thing throughout in round 3 as it was throughout rounds 1 and 2. Beneil's able to pass the mount in round 3. Tony tries to escape, but Beneil does a great job of just kind of floating with him, and ended up staying on top. They end the fight by exchanging shots on the ground. Beneil, throwing shots from the top. Tony kind of throwing some shots and some elbows from the bottom, which those elbows that Tony can throw really can cut people. They can still cut people. They're still dangerous. But, Beneil took the fight. I scored it all 3 rounds for Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush also got all 3 rounds scored for him on the judges' scorecards. He won by unanimous decision, 30-27 on all 3 cards. I'm interested to see where Dariush goes from here, excuse me. I think most likely he's going to get another guy in the top 5, and I think he deserves that. I think the only thing that might have him face somebody that's, in the top 10, so, 6 through 10, would be the fact that maybe some people will look at him and be like, well, that was a Tony Ferguson that's lost, 6 to 7 straight rounds, now, 9 to 10 straight rounds. He may not be the same Tony of old. Valid point, but you still have the man ranked number 5 coming into this fight. This man just beat the number 5 guy. I think he deserves, at least the new number 5 guy, if he's not the new number 5 guy. It was a great fight from Dariush. It was a great job. I think it's disappointing how much potential we thought Tony had going 12-0 over those 10 years to now go 0-3 since starting 2020. Tony's had a solid career. He's won an interim championship twice. Unfortunately, he's never been able to fight for the undisputed title. When he had those couple of undisputed title fights that were supposed to be against Khabib, injuries happened. First of all, that fight was they tried to make that fight 5 times. And I thought the last time, so in 2020 when he fought Justin Gaethje for the interim title, he was actually supposed to fight Khabib for the undisputed title. And then obviously COVID and everything like that happened, so that fight ended up falling apart. But I was really confident that fight was going to happen up until about maybe a month and a half before the fight. I saw on the UFC's Facebook page they put out like a poster or something to advertise the fight, and I was like, there we go. Don't put these 2 guys on a poster, because then the fight never happens. Every single time these guys have been on a poster to fight, it hasn't happened. And they've been on a poster for every time they're supposed to fight, all 5 times. So as soon as they put it on a poster, I was like, this fight's not going to happen. I got so disappointed. I don't think the 2 correlate at all. There's no causation between the 2. I just thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was a pretty funny correlation there. But so, Tony's never been able to fight for an undisputed title, which is unfortunate. Based off of his performance in his last 3 fights, I don't know that he's going to get the chance. I think maybe the UFC might give him one more shot, seeing as he had that amazing 12-0 run, but I don't know that he gets much after that. Dariush, on the other hand, I could see fighting for the title in the next year or 2 if he keeps to the grindstone like he has been, and I really can't wait to see what's next for these 2. I hope it's something well for Tony's career to help kind of give him a boost back towards the top again. And I'm really excited to see who they match up with Beneil, because this is going to be really interesting. Now, speaking of undisputed titles and who's going to be fighting for it in the next year or 2, let's get to the main event. Charles Olivera versus Michael Chandler for the vacant UFC Lightweight Championship of the world. This is going to be the first UFC Lightweight Champion, first new UFC Lightweight Champion, in almost 1,200 days. So, guys, I don't even know the math on that, guys. It's probably a little under 4 years. That's crazy. I think it was like 1,167 days or something like that. It had been since we had a new UFC Lightweight Champion of the world. And your new UFC Lightweight Champion of the world is Charles Olivera. Now, guys, this fight, this was a tale of 2 rounds. It truly was. It was a tale of 2 rounds. Olivera comes out. He lands a calf kick really early that ends up sweeping Chandler's front leg out from under him. But then Chandler comes back almost immediately and clips Olivera with a left hook that definitely hurts Olivera. You can see it shook him. Olivera shot in for a double leg takedown that Chandler ended up locking in a guillotine attempt on. Olivera escapes the guillotine attempt. He gets Chandler's back. It looks like Chandler's going to be in for a rough night. Chandler stands up and he actually tries to jump back and kind of slam Olivera while Olivera is still on his back. Doesn't really do anything. It actually helps Olivera lock in the body lock a little stronger. But Chandler, being the explosive athlete that he is, the explosive wrestler that he is able to explode, get out of that, get back up to his feet. He clips Olivera with another left hook again, drops Olivera, starts landing some good ground and pound. Oliveira survives strictly by locking Chandler up on the ground and just kind of locking him in with a body lock, getting his legs around him, and just kind of holding him there and surviving to the end of the round. Everything looked coming out of round one like Michael Chandler was going to be the new UFC lightweight champion of the world and only his second fight in the UFC. But then Charles Olivera said, hold on, wait a minute. You guys must have forgot. I'm still in this fight. He didn't finish me. They come out for round two. They have a brief exchange. This exchange sees Olivera clip Chandler with a left hook of his own and drop Chandler. He pounces on Chandler. Chandler kind of, he does get dropped, but he stands up. He's up against the cage. Olivera just pounces on him, just throwing at him. Chandler, trying to circle out to get away from that, gets caught with another left hook by Olivera. Dropped again. Olivera pounces again on the ground, landing some ground and pound, and he finishes the fight this time. Charles Olivera wins by TKO at 19 seconds of round two to become the new the new undisputed UFC lightweight champion of the world. Guys, tale of two rounds, like I said. Chandler hurt Olivera in the first round. Olivera finished Chandler in the second round. I actually scored round one for Chandler. I could see if some people wanted to put it at 10-8 because of how he dropped him and clipping him early in the round and then dropping him, getting his ground and pound. I just didn't think that there was enough there for a 10-8 round for myself. But I did think Chandler did enough to win round one. Obviously, Olivera said, I'm not even going to let this go to the scorecards. I'm finishing it in round two. And he did. Now, what I thought was interesting was back in episode 2, guys, I did a breakdown of the lightweight division at that time. It was right after the Conor McGregor-Dustin Poirier fight. So I laid out kind of where I thought the top 6 guys were and how the UFC could match them up. And I split it up into the better business choice for the UFC in terms of determining a new UFC lightweight champion should the title stay vacated, and then the better business choice and then the better merit choice. And on the better business choice side, I had Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor in their trilogy fight for the vacant UFC lightweight championship of the world. But for the number one contendership fight based off of that, I had Charles Olivera versus Michael Chandler. So I wasn't too far off in my what I kind of thought was going to happen. It turns out that Charles Olivera, Michael Chandler ended up being for the vacant title. And it seems like the Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor trilogy fight coming up in July is going to end up being a number one contendership bout for the title. So you flip-flop those two fights, and I was pretty spot on. I'm actually kind of impressed. I did not think I was going to be that close to being right on any of those fights. I thought the UFC was just going to take a right turn, onto the dirt track and be like, we're just going to ride this one out, and okay. So now in the better merit option, I did have Charles Olivera defending, not defending, but taking on Dustin Poirier for the UFC Lightweight Championship. Like I said, in the merit category, I thought, but Dustin Poirier decided to, with Dustin Poirier chasing Conor McGregor for that, or not, I guess not chasing, but he's tied up with Conor McGregor for that their trilogy bout in July. I was perfectly fine with Olivera and Chandler getting the vacant title opportunity. Like I thought it was I thought that was definitely merited as well. A lot of people are like, look, Michael Chandler just came into the organization. There's no way he should be fighting for his title, for a title, excuse me, not his title, but for a title, his second fight in. I can understand that to a point. Like, yeah, he is new in the promotion, but this guy's been doing it for almost a decade outside the UFC. He's proven he's beaten just about all of the top guys outside of the UFC. And he didn't slide in this fight willy-nilly or with Dana White privilege, as Tony Ferguson tried to call him out for the pre-fight press conference. He built his name and reputation outside the UFC for a decade, like I said. Then he kicked the door down when he came in January in the co-main event of the Dustin Poirier-Conor McGregor 2 card, and he KO'd Dan Hooker inside a round. I think it was even before the halfway point of the first round. He definitely warranted this title shot. Now, Olivera, he's been on a tear of 8 to 9 fights, finishing most of those guys as well, and he's been in the UFC doing it for over a decade. Definitely warranted for him as well. Guys, tale of two rounds, like I said. Anybody that thinks Olivera didn't deserve this title shot is not, no offense, but I don't think they are a true MMA fan. I don't think they've truly followed the sport. And again, anybody that thinks Michael Chandler didn't deserve it just because it was his second fight in the UFC, I disagree with them for the same points that I made for thinking that Charles Olivera didn't deserve the shot. I haven't heard a lot of people come out and say that about Olivera. I've more so heard it about Chandler, but guys, come on now. These guys have been doing it a while. They definitely deserve it. Who were you going to match Chandler up with after he KO'd Hooker inside of a round? Everybody else in the division was tied up. He's not fighting anybody outside the top 10, and I don't even think you match him up with somebody outside of the top 5. So this was the fight that was warranted for both guys, and that was the fight that the fans got. And I thought that the fight that the fans got, myself being a fan, including myself as a fan in that, I thought it was a great fight. Honestly, I'd love to see him do it again. I know it ended pretty definitively in the second round, but that first round was really exciting. It was kind of a little bit of a back and forth there, with Olivera getting clipped, but then having some ground control and working onto Chandler's back, but then getting clipped again, and then Olivera coming out, clipping Chandler and finishing him. It was a very exciting fight. I wouldn't mind seeing him run it back. Guys, great night of fights. Really exciting. Obviously ended in an exciting fashion, Congratulations, Charles Olivera. Much deserved. Michael Chandler said that he's going to have that belt wrapped around his waist in the next 12 months. Time will tell on that. But I can't say that I have too many arguments against that being a possibility. Tony Ferguson, Tony Ferguson and Jacare Souza, I hope they reflect on their careers. I hope they reflect on what they want to do moving forward. And I hope they make the best choice for them. I hope Tony takes some time, though, to really do that portion on the mental side. I hope Jacare takes all the time he needs to get healed and is able to not have it, rehab himself enough where he's not going to have any lasting effects from this injury. Great fights from Beneil Dariush and Andre Muniz, getting their wins there. Can't wait to see what the UFC has next for those guys. And that's going to wrap this one up, guys. So, as always, if you guys have any suggestions on fight cards, drop it in the comments here. Hit me up over on Instagram or Facebook. Facebook is One More Round with Rob. On Instagram, it's at One More Round Rob. So hit me up over there. If you have any cards coming up that you think will be interesting, you want me to take a look at, let me know. I'll certainly, look into them. Other than that, guys, stay happy, healthy, and safe. And congratulations, you just went one more round with Rob. Have a good one. We'll see you next time, guys.